Hey, yo, infidels, what's up? It's a Friday episode of the Dangerous Brown podcast. Good to see you guys with me. Um, you know what I say, sleeper cell is small but growing. I want to begin by saying Wikipedia donations 105. Put it on the board. I'll try to figure out how to edit that better so it looks better later and maybe a different color and maybe not right above my head. But this is a good reminder that Wikipedia donations are at 105. All right, so Friday episode. This is, LBJ's Lyndon B. Johnson's Dick Energy episode. Usually, I'll say this: I'll dedicate the entire episode to LBJ and all that, and we'll go over his presidency a little bit. But he's rare where there was just one single act. Usually, I try to look at the presidency as a whole before I give out the energies. But this time, there was one single act that he did that I was like, oh, okay, this defines his energy right there. And we will get to that in a second. Couple things I want to talk about news-wise. A lot of things happened in the 2 days that we were gone that I think deserve a little bit of energy to. And then I want to also run a joke that I've been writing. Now that I'm back on stage, I've been writing a lot more, so I can sort of use this to run more jokes at the top and just try to figure out to see if I can take them to stage. All right. Let's see. What else? What did I want to talk? Oh yeah, Dr. Seuss. That's where I wanted to talk about. Because, there's this whole sort of controversy that are we canceling Dr. Seuss? And the answer is, even as someone who rails against cancel culture, as I have done here, really, honestly, in an attempt to get canceled one day. I mean, looking back on all the episodes I recorded, even the name of the first episode, you know what I mean, of this podcast. If you don't know what it is, go back and look at it. Everything I've done is probably, in effect, going to get me canceled at some point, or quote-unquote canceled. I mean, there's no way at this point I don't get kicked off a project for the stuff I've said. I don't think it's possible. Unless I dig so far deep that people are like, well, it just is what it is. I don't mind. But I own what I say, so maybe I won't. We'll see. Time will tell. Times they are a-changing, I've heard. And, so... and so my first immediate thought was when I heard about Dr. Seuss getting canceled is I thought he was getting canceled for the propaganda posters used to draw the Japanese people and I have a whole episode in the early episodes. If you look up, I think this is in one of the first 10 episodes of this podcast. If you go back to Dr. Seuss and the Japanese, I talk about it. I talk about like the really, definitely by today's standards, I think even by 1940 standards, racist. Hold on. Give me 1 second. I got to close the door. I left the door to the house wide open. Give me 1 second. Boom. I'm back. That was a second. That was quick. Hey, it's like Bill O'Reilly here. We're doing it live. That's a reference for... That's a reference I don't think I know there's a couple younger listeners to the podcast. I don't even know. Do you guys know who Bill O'Reilly is? It blows my mind now. It's been so long since he's been on air, but it blows my mind. There's this whole generation of kids now that just don't know the gift that was Bill O'Reilly. Gift is a strong word, but he really dictated news punditry for a while. He was the top guy for a long time. Fox News really was destroying the market. Was really killing it way back when. I think they're killing it less now, but when Bill O'Reilly was on top, Fox News was on top. Really just working that conservative propaganda machine to its finest, playing it like a fiddle, Bill O'Reilly. But yeah, anyways, back to another racist. We're talking about Dr. Seuss. No, but he drew, they're very interesting. There are a lot of these drawings of him telling people that we should send the Japanese to internment camps, and he was very much for that. And in the episode I talk about it, but I also talk about how Horton Hears a Who is his apology to the Japanese people. He visited Japan, realized that I've just been writing this or drawing this war propaganda. I've never met the people of Japan. When I finally go to Japan, and he visited the sites of Hiroshima, and he visited the sites of Nagasaki, or maybe just Hiroshima, one or both of them, he realized the actual straight up human suffering that was caused by it, human suffering. Because a lot of times all those terrible things that happen far away to faraway people, they're just things that happen to faraway people. You don't really understand the toll and the effect it has on the community, and you go visit the community and you're like, oh, this was huge. And I've talked about it before on my sort of anime theory on how the bomb shaped anime and all that sort of stuff. And he really got the effect of what these bombs did, and the fact that he was really just calling for people to get interned. When he was doing these propaganda, these political drawings, he didn't think of them as people. He viewed them as the enemy. And now he's like, he visits Japan, goes, oh, these are human beings just like me, and he writes Horton Hears a Who. A person's a person no matter how small, which I think is a slight joke on the Japanese height. I've always maintained that. But the point is this, right? Let's say Dr. Seuss was getting canceled for that, which he's not. We'll get into why he's being quote unquote canceled. Let's say he was canceled for that. If you look throughout his career, you'll find that he finds redemption. And I've talked about this before, recently with Only JS, in the Only JS episode where I talk about what's the goal with her. It's even the worst people aren't devoid of redemption. Whereas, I'm saying, obviously, if people do terrible things and they deserve to be punished for it, but stuff like this, stuff like the Dr. Seuss in Japan, what made Dr. Seuss change his mind about the Japanese people? Education. He was ignorant, then he was educated. That chance would not have existed today. He would have just been, quote unquote, destroyed. So that's what I thought he was getting canceled for. So what really happened, from what I read, is that the Dr. Seuss Foundation is discontinuing 6 of his books because they don't think they aged well because of maybe the sort of racial stereotypical drawings that he had. Maybe some of them, that seemed to be the vibe, and that's not being canceled. That's the exact opposite of being canceled, really. That's the own person or the own foundation deciding we're not going to publish these books anymore. It's their prerogative. They could choose not to publish it. And if I had to be 100% honest, they probably weren't publishing it because they weren't selling that well. None of the books they stopped publishing are Green Eggs and Ham or The Cat in the Hat or The Places You'll Go, One Fish, Two Fish. Those books are staying because they sell well. It's easy to, and I don't want to. It's easy to make the decision not to sell the books that aren't selling well, and that have these sort of racially stereotypical drawings. It's easy to make that decision. That's not a canceling. That's just good business sense. Duh, dude. Of course we'll stop selling the books. None of the household name books are getting taken out, as far as I'm concerned. Hold on. I'll look this up right now. Dr. Seuss stops production. Let's see what Google comes up with right there. We'll cease publishing 6 books because of racial imagery. Let's see. Does it say? McElligot's Pool, On Beyond Zebra, Scrambled Egg Super, The Cat's Quizzer. See, I know there's 2 more. Let's see. I think I saw it on Mulberry Street and If I Ran a Zoo. All right, so I think I saw it on Mulberry Street is probably, If I Ran a Zoo, those are pretty famous. I think I've never even heard of McElligot's Pool, The Cat's Quizzer, Scrambled Egg Super, On Beyond Zebra. I think I've heard of On Beyond Zebra. Um, Mulberry Street is the one I recognize the most. And, you know, I bet you it's just not selling well. More anything than that. I mean, I think I saw it on Mulberry Street. Racist imagery. I'm just Googling that right now. No, and there is no actual, okay. Here we go. Something about, I think I saw it on Mulberry Street, a white guy is whipping somebody? Dr. Seuss was shaped by completely immersive white supremacist culture. I mean, relax, bro. Relax. Oh, you mean he grew up in America? Okay. You know? But you know. Yeah, so I don't think it's that bad at all here. Yeah, so you know, it's not really being canceled. They're not producing some of his books. La-di freaking da. Both sides kind of need to calm down here. It's just Dr. Seuss, you know? Yeah, but that was just my thoughts on that. I didn't want to take too much. I ended up taking a little bit more time than I wanted to take there. I'm booked tonight. Sorry, I got, doing business on the podcast. I shouldn't be texting. I don't have a partner with me to continue to pick up the slack when I'm texting stuff. That was so very rude to everybody. I was just like, well, let me just set up the shows. I have shows tonight. So I was just trying, somebody booked me for another show that I couldn't do, because your boy's out here getting booked. But yeah. Speaking of stand-up, this is a good transition to the joke that I might try today. But I wanted to say it on here first, because this is basically like an open mic at some points to me. All right. How funny would it be if when we died and we went to meet our maker to be judged on whether or not we go to heaven and hell, we looked up and it was just Zeus looking down on us real angry, just like holding his lightning bolt all mad and shit? Like, that'd be so funny. If he was like, well, dude, what were you guys thinking? You guys had it right with the Greeks and you guys strayed so far, you dumb motherfuckers really thought there was one God? One God. We gods do everything for you, and you think there's just one of us? All you had to do was sacrifice one goat to me, and Corona would have been over. But no. You guys had to pray to Jesus or whatever. In the moment it would suck, but oh God, how funny would that be? How funny would that be? Oh, man. I kind of hope it happens just because it would be hilarious. Because everyone's sort of arguing about how they're always right. Right? Like, Islam, Christianity, Judaism. They're like, ours is the true one. There's wars fought over theirs being the true one. And it would just be so funny if the ancient Greeks were right. And by extension, the Romans. Romans are just ancient Greeks with a bit of a rebrand. So, hopefully that happens, but hopefully it doesn't. You know what I mean? Hopefully we all just sort of die, but who knows? Anyways, we're talking about Lyndon B. Johnson and his presidential dick energy. Now, I started doing the research just on Wikipedia, donations at 105. You know me. I don't try not to look past Wikipedia. I make sure to offer more opinions and facts. You know what this is about. And I started going through the thing because Nixon, I did a deep dive into his presidency because I wanted to know what Nixon was like outside of Watergate. Because as you grow older, that's the only thing you know about Nixon. Who knows about détente and his foreign policy relations with China, really? You know what I mean? Like the average person, who cares? So I did like a deep dive into his presidency, and I was starting to do the same thing with Johnson. Like let me like look really at what's going on with Johnson and his domestic policy and his foreign policy, and um you find some interesting stuff that sometimes I want to share with you. He was JFK's vice president. Um, he was a powerless vice president. He was sort of cut out of the sort of decisions and all that stuff. It was really JFK and his brother and a couple other cabinet members that was big. He was cut out of a lot of meetings. It's interesting to see the vice presidential roles and how some, like Nixon, are a powerful vice president. Cheney, I would say, was a powerful vice president. And some are these like weird, lame duck vice presidents, where Johnson was one of them. There was a sort of time in American politics where if a vice president was considered a career-ending job, like you weren't gonna get any higher than that. It was sort of a political death sentence in a weird way. It's weird to say death sentence because you are the VP of the most powerful country. But it was, I guess, like a ceremonial death sentence, like a congratulations on making it this far in politics, but you ain't gonna reach the highest peak that you want to reach. So he was a relatively powerless vice president, which is, I don't know, Biden, I wouldn't say was powerless, but I wouldn't say he was like Cheney. Pence was, especially at the end, I don't know, I wouldn't say powerless. He was just sort of a mindless lackey, I would say, with Pence, and that's not necessarily powerless, especially when he, at the end decision, when he didn't try to help out with the coup. I would say he was a vice president who had to deal with some stuff. But Johnson was pretty powerless. He was pretty frustrated with the job. He was a very powerful politician at that point. The sort of the Senate Majority Leader, where like how powerful Mitch McConnell was, right? That was the Senate Majority Leader. He had a lot of say in the Trump government, and Johnson was one of the first ones to really shape that role into what it was. He was a very powerful, very liberal, one of the most liberal presidents I think we've ever had, very left-leaning. He grew up poor and got out of his poor surroundings through education. So, I mean, it was naturally set up to be more liberal if you grew up poor, educated yourself into power. Generally, I could be making that up, but that just, you know what, I'm kind of making that up. I'm trying to figure out why because he's from Texas. It's not like he came from California or like some liberal haven. He was from Texas, and we all know how conservative Texas is. So he was a liberal president. There's a lot of very liberal things that he fought for. Especially after Kennedy died, he was a big civil rights guy. Kennedy was on the verge of passing all these civil rights acts when he died, and Johnson really pushed them through. And he said the best way to memorialize Kennedy was to push it through. So he passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which banned racial segregation, banned employment discrimination. And the way he did this was pretty genius. He used God, and he said, basically was saying, if you were a godly man, if you take to heart the teachings of God and Jesus, then how can you be for racial discrimination? So he really put this sort of white conservative America in this, like, I read this and I thought it was great, a moral straitjacket where they couldn't use God to discriminate. Like, if you listen to the last Exodus chapters I did, I think 9 through 16, I talk about how there's this one point where the former Israelites are complaining to Moses and they want to be slaves again. And I say that how that's a very powerful line, and how you can use that to justify slavery if you want to use the Bible to justify slavery, because the Bible is a book of many lessons and you can pick and choose what you want from it. And for Johnson to get ahead of that and use religion as a way to end racial discrimination, really, like the article or the Wikipedia said, put America in or white America in a moral straitjacket. He knew when he signed it, the civil no, okay. He signed the Voting Rights Act to end voting discrimination and like poll tax and the literacy tests to get, and he really shot up the percentage of black voters. Something like when he signed the act, there was like only 6% of black voters in southern states were registered, I think, and then when he signed the act, it shot up like more than quadrupled, I believe. Even like the numbers was huge, maybe even more. I went from like 8 to like 60 something. You know what I mean? He really helped drive and helped get minority voters votes, which, if you look in Congress right now and in state legislatures right now, Republicans are actively trying to make sure that people of color can't vote, because they realize that they're kind of screwed if they do. But, it's not about race, as they say. He signed the Civil Rights Act of 1965, which ended housing discrimination. So you couldn't say, no, you can't live here just because you're black. I believe it was either during the Voting Rights Act or the Civil Rights Act. He was like, when he signed it, he was like, well, we've just lost the South, which, was very, if you take a look at his re-election map, I'll put it up here. Let's see where I'm at. 22 minutes. I gotta take notes like this because I don't have no producer with me, If you look at the Civil Rights Act, if you look at this election map, he dominates the country minus the South. I think this is where the Democrats truly start losing the South, where as Nixon calls it, the Southern strategy to win over these sort of Southern white, I won't say racist, but I'll say anti-black voters. I think you see it here, and then I think it's very, you have Carter, who wins the South, and that's how he becomes president, and then after that, the South is pretty reliably red, and it all stems from these civil rights reforms. You could just see it in the election maps, is that the Democrats consistently hold the South, they pass civil rights reforms, and then they just lose the South. I don't know if you want to call it a party switch. People go like, oh, there's no such thing as a party switch. Fine, maybe the parties didn't switch, whatever. But there's definitely an ideological shift here. And it comes from when Johnson signs these civil rights acts. It's just, it is what it is. I'm a big fan of what he did domestically here. The civil rights, he had something called the War on Poverty. I said that weird. The War on Poverty. And he set up Medicare, expanded federal housing for low-income people, food stamps, did all that. So Johnson sort of, to me, in my eyes, Johnson sort of, he called it the Great Society Reform. It's sort of these expanded on the New Deal and stuff. Johnson sort of domestically was a great president. His failings come pretty exclusively with Vietnam. It just seemed like he had no idea what he was doing with Vietnam. He seemed to be like swayed by the people around him really easily. He watched the polls closely and tried to decide on what to do with Vietnam based on how the people were feeling, which is not the best way to lead a military campaign. He was sort of, as a commander-in-chief, I would say from what I read, just kind of a little bit weak-willed. He ended up expanding bombing and doing troop surge after troop surge after it was, and they didn't really help, obviously, because the North Vietnam ended up going on this offensive called the Tet Offensive and attacking these southern Vietnam cities. So the U.S. was trying to protect southern Vietnam interests, and it was, that's who they were supporting. It just sort of, he just sort of failed to do anything sort of important. He never really gained any ground on the North Vietnamese. It just seemed like he was just throwing bodies into a wood chipper. That's what it felt like. It just is just quick, just sort of glancing over reading, and it really he ended up being so unpopular because of Vietnam that when it came time for him to be reelected, he chose not to run. I mean, if you remember his election map, he dominated his election, and yet he chose not to be reelected because of how unpopular Vietnam made him. And it sort of undid all the goodwill he had with the American people for all the good he did domestically. You know? And it's just sort of interesting. And so while I was reading all that, I was like, I'd give Lyndon B. Johnson a medium dick energy, right? That's where I was going to land on during this episode. And then I remembered a story that I was told in like high school. Or I read in high school, and I had to look it up, and it's true, and this is the story. Lyndon B. Johnson once answered reporters badgering him about why the United States was in Vietnam with a simple, unmistakable, off-the-record gesture. He unzipped, pulled out his penis, and said, "This is why." Bro, what? I can't even imagine if Lyndon B. Johnson was alive today, how they would be treating him. Louis C.K. asked for permission and almost lost his career. This dude was the president and just pulled his dick out on a reporters. Unbelievable, dude. Apparently Johnson loved his dick, which is kind of what you want from a president. I realized while I was reading about him, I don't want a president to be like, my dick is all right. No, I want my president to be like, yo, my dick is fire, dude. Apparently he would pull it out in front of colleagues and be like, dude, have you seen anything this big? Amazing. Amazing. Amazing, dude. Like, I can't, like, all the sort of stuff I went over, the war on poverty and all that was so unnecessary for me deciding where he stood on this list. I mean, clearly big dick energy, dude. Clearly. I can't even imagine just the balls that it would take to do that to a reporter, dude. Let me see if there's I know there's more stories. Yeah, he was notorious for involving his dick in the daily lives of his colleagues. Interesting. Daily, dude. Daily. He called it jumbo. Jumbo. Here's another quote from a book about him. According to Brower, it was important that the newly installed jet stream in the White House shower be blasting water directly on his dick. I mean, dude. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, dude. This guy's a hero. I don't know what else to say. This whole time I was like, well, let me dive into who he was and his upbringing and his shaping of the Senate Majority Leader role and his establishing of Medicare and his expansions of voting rights and his failures in Vietnam and where does he fall in this sort of ranking that I've created. And the answer was so obvious the whole time. It was staring me right in the face, like it was staring his colleagues right in the face. Jumbo. He called it jumbo. I mean, I just can't. Like, there's so many, dude. If you just search up just Google search LBJ's penis. Why Lyndon B. Johnson, a truly awful man, is my political hero. Um, and it's just, and the whole article is about, how, oh, all his you know a lot a lot of things he did that were bad. His Vietnam War sort of shenanigans, we'll call him. He shenaniganed in Vietnam. Um, and at the end you're like, oh, but bro, come on. He pulled out his dick all the time as a president. Input. You know how scandalous that is? That's so scandalous, dude. We're talking the 60s, bro. I don't know what sexuality in the public were like in the 60s, but judging how conservative America is now, I can't even imagine what it was like in the 60s. And this dude was showing his penis to reporters. Unbelievable. I wish I could do that. Yo, why'd you do that? Just put my dick. Like, I get a lot of comments now about why I live with my parents, just because people completely can't fathom the idea of someone losing their job during a pandemic for whatever reason. I had worked so hard. I worked 7 years, and I finally got to the point where I could be a full-time stand-up comedian. No other job, just stand-up, funding my life. And I was so proud of myself. And the pandemic hit, and I lost it all. And I had to start over again. And I couldn't afford rent where I lived. And my parents are amazing people, and let me move back into their gorgeous house. And people just can't fathom that idea. And I really wish I could, when they ask me, why do you still live with your parents? I could just take out my penis and be like, this is why. 'Cause fucking Jumbo, dude. Jumbo. So, Lyndon B. Johnson, despite all your faults, you're clearly a hero. I appreciate you, buddy. If you're up here, if you're up there or down there, wherever you are listening. I shouldn't have even, this should have been honestly, I spent, how long? We're at 33 minutes. I started talking about Lyndon B. Johnson like 15 minutes in. I probably should have just done the Jumbo story. And that should have just been it. But I wanted to give him a little bit of a fair shot. Yeah. I think that's all I have for today, really. We talked about Dr. Seuss. I ran the Zeus joke by you. We talked about LBJ. 30 minutes. Been a pretty full day. Guys, please subscribe to YouTube and all that sort of stuff. I'll put the link to my Discord in my bio. But I have a Discord now where you can discuss the podcast if you have ideas, if you want to discuss it. In case you don't want to discuss in the comment section. Because the comment section, they don't, for some reason they delete some of the comments. Like, Chris, Galena Bean Rush, which I'm going to talk about that next week. You commented something about Texas, and I tried to find it, and it just wouldn't show up. And so, the Discord will probably be better for, like, actual interaction and discussion. Please, though, leave comments on the YouTube. Help it out, you guys see my YouTube numbers. They're double digits, which I'm okay about. The sleeper cell is small, and hopefully will, be growing. But, just don't forget to subscribe. Join the Discord. Because I go live on TikTok, and I have a Clubhouse room that I run now, and you just get to see my schedule. You get to see. I'll start posting where my stand-up dates are at there too. So once it grows. So yeah, the link to the Discord is gonna be in the bio of this. So join that. It'll give you all the information for everything. If we get enough people to join, we can have a nice little Among Us game going. That's something that I want as well. But yeah, this was a story of a girl who cried the river and drowned the whole world, and that's what this episode was about. So, guys, thank you so much for listening, Infidels. I'll see ya on Wednesday. LBJ Jumbo Big Dick Energy.